Hello and welcome to another video from me, Rough Swordsman, Wargamer. It's an open the box and it's an exclusive unboxing of a game from Vuca Simulations that's not actually out until sometime next month. And it is New Cold War, a game designed by Andoni Orive and Igor Plaza. Apologies, chaps, if I've mispronounced your names. And I must thank Patrick and everybody at Vuca Simulations for sending me this advanced copy for you to have a look at. So what's all this New Cold War 1989 to 2019 all about? New Cold War takes place during the 30 years between the collapse of the Soviet Union and the onset of the COVID-19 health crisis. During these 3 decades, players will take on the roles of one of 4 great powers vying for dominance in world geopolitics: Russia, China, the United States, and the European Union. Additionally, the game accommodates 3 or 2-player versions and includes a solitaire mode through a system of bots. Initially, the confrontation is between the red bloc, consisting of Russia and China, and the blue bloc, comprising the United States and the European Union. However, each player must also prioritize their own strategies, as only one power can emerge victorious at the end of the game. Therefore, this game starts with cooperation between allied powers in the early stages, but becomes entirely competitive as the moment of final victory approaches. New Cold War utilizes a card-driven game mechanic. By navigating through the most significant historical events from 1989 to 2019, players strive to increase their control of countries and different regions of the world. Other key factors to manage include military force and United Nations Security Council vetoes. Players' strategies are determined by a series of hidden objectives that set the agenda they must pursue to achieve victory. So in the box we have 1 rulebook, 1 mounted map, 42 counters, 225 wooden discs, 4-player display sheets, and 167 cards. And here we can see some of the contents, the cards and the board. Quite an abstract sort of version of the world, and some of the counters and wooden discs. Playing time, about 180 minutes. Players 1 to 4. And on the game scales here it says complexity is 4 out of 10, and solitaire suitability 8 out of 10. Here we have the designers, developers, and such. And apart from Patrick Gerbhardt, I'm not going to try and pronounce them. I'll leave that there for you to look for yourself. And ages 14 plus. Right, let's get the shrink wrap off. The shrink wrap is off, so let's open the box. And the first thing we see are the rules. So let's have a look at those. So the rule book, full color, 47 pages, but it's not all rules. In this rule book, you've got player tutorials and sections on how the bots work if you're playing solo or with 2 or 3 players. So we've got a nice contents here, an introduction, which I think is basically what's repeated on the back of the box. The components, we have the game board, and we'll have a look at that later. So we've got the countries. There are 3 types. We've got the regional powers. As it says here, they are geostrategic countries that exercise leadership in their corresponding region. Geostrategic countries, they have a high geopolitical interest and that are key to controlling a certain region. And then non-geostrategic countries, which don't have a very high geostrategic impact. And these numbers here are the victory points you can achieve if you control those spaces. Some countries are more stable than others, and the higher the number to the left of the country shows you its stability. So countries with a stability of 3 or 4 have a high stability, right down to a stability of 1. And that number indicates how tough it is, if you like, to perform an operation in that country. And the higher the stability, the more operational points it will cost. Some countries will have an influence from a certain power. These are shown here. So this is under the influence of the USA. And in this game, blue is the alliance of the USA and Europe, and red, China and Russia. And the two numbers are this sort of stability of the sort of Western alliance, and the bottom number, Russia and China. So the board is split into 7 regions, which you can see here, and each region will have this info box next to it, which we'll have a look at, as I say, when we look at the game board. And each box shows you how many countries you have to control that region, and the victory points that you can get for each of the countries that control it. And the open padlock here indicates that at the start of the game, only the EU, I keep saying Europe, but it's the EU, only has access to that region. So controlling regions. And the good thing about this rulebook is there are a lot of explanatory diagrams, pictures to show you what's going on. So to control a region, as I mentioned earlier, you have to control that number of countries in that region indicated by its info box. And here are a couple of examples where, even though Russia has, oh, there's a typo there, but not too worrisome. Looks like Russia control a lot, but because of the victory points that the Russians get, isn't enough to control the region. A little bit more about this open and locked accessibility at the start of the game, how you actually gain access to regions. You can do it through event cards, and here on turn 5, China will automatically gain access to Africa, and the EU will gain access to South America. There are sub-regions in the game that aren't, I think, that important, but will gain you victory points. And these little sub-regions are linked by these orange lines here. For instance, Maghreb there, if you control these 4, you win this sub-region, if you like. You gain the victory points, and you will turn this over because these are placed on the board, and that means nobody else can get that reward. In the center of the board, there's this negotiating center where players will place their cards at the start of the turn, and you have to place them. Everybody has to place their cards. Once they're placed, you can't change your mind. Then you'll place it in one of these areas, and that dictates what happens with that card. A little bit about the tracks. You've got the game turn track split into 3 decades. When I quickly looked at this, when I first got the game, I thought it said decode, but it's not. It's my eyes. It's first, second, and third decade, because this game is over 30 years. You've got the victory points track, the prestige track, the media track. So there's quite a lot going on. It's not an overly complex game, but there's a lot going on. I've actually played this game, played it at PunchCon in 2024 with the guys from Vuca. And if I remember correctly, it looks like since I played it and now, there's a little bit more depth and a bit more happening in the game. So it's evolved during that time. Then we've got the cards, which we'll look at. You've got event cards, which you use, I believe, a little bit like a coin game where you can either use the event or you can use the points up at the top there, the operational points. And you've got your own cards, your own power cards, event cards, but you might get some rival power event cards. And this explains how to use those. There are things called war cards. And again, what happens when you're using another powers war card. And there are neutral event cards that can be played as somebody's own power event card. Then you've got these objective cards. At the start of the game, you're going to be given, I think, 3 objective cards and you choose 2. And if you complete the objectives on those cards, you win the game. Yep, only 2 objectives needed to automatically win the game. But you can only achieve one or declare one once per turn. Then you've got the wooden markers. There are a ton of those. And somebody asked me when I mentioned I received this game on the War Room, which is our weekly Saturday vlog that we do. Somebody asked, are there stickers? And I said, I think, thankfully, no. They're printed already on the wooden discs. And here we can see some of the different types. So each country or power will have their own markers. Some miscellaneous markers here. There are also some counters which we'll look at, but there aren't that many. There are also player displays, which I don't think we had in the prototype sort of version we were playing. So we'll look at those as well. And then we're into preparing the game, how that's all set up. And then there's the section on the sequence of play. So as you can see here, the structure. You'll deal 4 cards to each player. Then you're going to be drawing your objective cards in turns 1 and 5. Then there's an exchange. You can exchange cards between allied powers. Now remember, this is one of those semi-cooperative games where everything starts off all lovey-dovey between the 2 powers of the alliance. But as the game progresses, you will look out more and more for your own powers advantages. So it can get a little bit sort of backstabby as the game goes on. You can exchange cards with the leftover pile if you're not happy with what you've got. Reset the available coup track. Action phase, so you're playing your cards. Then the turn end phase. And then it's that sequence of play broken down into more detail. Again, illustrated with lots of pictures. So here's the event card options. When you play your cards, if you're playing one of your own or a neutral card, you can choose between playing the event or the OPs, but not both. If you're playing somebody else's power card or a negative card, because yes, there are negative cards, you have to play both bits. First you get the OPs and then you play the event. So here's what happens. If you play it for the event, you of course do what it says on the card. If you're playing it for its OPs, you have 6 things you can do. And I know these don't mean much at the moment, but as you start reading through the rules, it becomes clear what all those actions are. Placing or removing control. Here's a little helpful diagram about that. Next one is the coup d'etat, which is explained here. Placing or removing stability. So even though it's quite a chunky rule book, as I said earlier, it's lots of pictures to help you along with explaining the rules. Fake news. Increasing prestige. Influencing the media. These are all things you can do in the action phase. Here's the media track, whether or not you're in favour with the world's media. creating an operational point reserve. You've got the UN Security Council sticking their nose in. You've got vetoes and things like that going on. You can do 1 veto per player per turn. So each power has 3 veto markers, so you can veto things you don't like. That's quite a bit on that. And then we're into the turn end phase, how that all works. So prestige checks. That will affect, I think, VPs and your OP reserve marker total. Global scoring phases, depending on what you control. How to win. So winning by objectives, winning by victory points, and US superiority. And here, right at the end, is how to earn VPs and how to lose them. And that's the rules. So we've got sort of 24 pages because the rest of the book is how the bots work and the player tutorial. So we'll have a quick look through that, give you an idea. So we've got rules for less than 4 players and how the bots work. How the bots play the cards, their interactions, their flowcharts. Lots of tables here. And examples. So I won't spend too much time on that because that'll be up to you if you play it solo or with 2 or 3 players and yourself. How bots apply the effects of their advantage on the media track before the global scoring phase, the 3-player special rules, and the 2-player special rules. And the solitaire special rules. And then we've got a tutorial for 4 players. So you can set this up and work your way through it. So that's a nice in-depth tutorial. And then designer notes. And then right at the end, we've got the list of objectives you can get for each of the powers and how much they're worth in VPs. List of event cards and how much operational points you can get. And then these permanent events, which when played, that's it for the rest of the game. They're there until the end. And this is the bots interpretation table. A little card symbol list here, an abbreviation list, and then that's it. Crikey. Looks involved, but I think once you get into the swing of it, it'll just sort of tick along. So, them's the rules. Next, we've got 3 sealed decks of cards, so let's have a look at those. Right, we've taken the cellophane off, and I've split the packs up. We've got a heck of a lot of these event cards, which are given out to the players. So this is a neutral one, worth 1 OP. What happens there? Fake news, a lot of neutral ones. Here's one for Russia. So they can either use that if they're the Russian player for the event or the OPs. And a lot of these, if you're of a certain age, you will recognize over the last, 30 years that this game goes from 1989 to 2019. So lots and lots of event cards, which is great. And here's some more. China, Tiananmen Square Massacre, dear oh dear. Beijing Olympic Games. There are a lot of China ones here. US. Microsoft Empire. And genocide. Oh, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Stuff for the EU. There she is. Pope Francis. So lots and lots of event cards which will make the game far more replayable. And then we've got the objective cards for each power. So here are the Russian ones. I'll go quickly through them so you can still have a bit of a surprise when you play the game. We've got ones for China, USA, and the EU. So there we go. That's all the cards. Oh, just one more thing about the cards. They are nice quality. They've actually got a linen finish on them. So they sort of move over each other nicely. Got a nice sort of shiny finish. Nice feel to these cards. Next up, a huge bag of wooden counters. As I said earlier, these are printed on, so no need to spend hours stickering them. And here's a close-up of some of them. Really nice quality, nicely printed wooden discs. Just the one sheet of counters. Here we can see these sub-regions I mentioned earlier that go onto the player board. Here are the veto markers for each player, or each power, and the sort of permanent events that happen you place on the game board when you are told to do so. And on the other side, this is what you do to the sub-regions when you complete it and claim the VPs. You turn it over and leave it on the board. And the other side of those, they're pre-punched, so no clipping, rounded, lovely. Then we have the 4 player boards for the 4 powers. And these are actually on card, so nice and durable. Let's have a quick look at each one of those. These are single-sided, but they're just lovely quality. So here's China. They're basically the same. They've got a list of objective cards for the other players, so you can see what they might be going for. The initial deployment of China, and other bits of info that will be helpful for the Chinese player. Here's Russia, the US, and the EU. And lastly, let's have a look at the mounted board. No, I haven't gone bonkers. This is actually the other side of the map. I just wanted to show you that it's not plain. Vuca Sims have gone to the trouble of putting a nice print on the back of the map, which they don't have to, but I think it's great. So here's the map, as I always say, in nearly all its glory. Can't quite get it all in. So not a true sort of geographical map. We've got the continents around the edge. Here we can see Africa, of course, South America, Middle East, Europe. Can't see any United Kingdom over there. There may well be some event cards concerning us. And Asia. And you can see here the info boxes. So to control Africa, you've got to have control of 9 countries within the African continent. And these are the victory points, I believe, that each power will get if they do that. And these spaces here are the sub-regions that you're going to place those counters I showed you earlier, and then flip them when they're completed. Here is where players put their cards. I think they put them down here first just to show that they're placed, and once they're placed you then choose whether or not you're going to use the operational points or the event. Here we've got the media track and the game turn track, split into those 3 decades. These permanent events, which again are on the counter sheet, so when these come up through, I think, event cards, you place them on the board there and they stay there for the rest of the game. And around the outside you can see the victory point track. It's an abstract map, of course, but quite a nice looking map. And that's it. That's everything in the box. So this has been an Open the Box, an unboxing of a brand new game from Vuca Simulations. New Cold War from 1989 to 2019. A game by Andoni Orive, and Igor Plaza. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and you found it interesting. As I said earlier in the video, I've actually played a prototype of this game back at PunchCon last year and thoroughly enjoyed it actually. But it does look like things have been tweaked and added to make the game even better. So if you have enjoyed this and you haven't done so already, it would be great if you would consider subscribing to the channel. Really does help. The other thing that's a good thing to do for the little channel is to push the like button, the thumbs up underneath the video. And if you want to be informed of other content the channel uploads, then push the bell. But make sure you push all notifications, otherwise YouTube might forget to tell you. As always, I encourage you to leave a comment. What do you think? I haven't gone into the ins and outs of the rules, but I hope it was enough to give you a flavour of what's going on. I'm no expert, but it looks like it's a little bit like a coin game, but the subject is a good one. And at the time of this video going live, I believe it's due for general release sometime next month. But let me know what you think, because as you know, I love to read them. Thanks as always to my subscribers. Thank you so much. And just before I go, if you wish to support the channel a little bit further, you can. You can buy the channel a coffee. And there's a link for that in the description. Or if you wish, you can push the super thanks button, which is either on the right-hand side underneath the video, or clicking those 3 little dots that you see there will bring up the super thanks option. If you decide to do that, thank you so much. The channel appreciates it. Right, not a lot of counter-punching to do. Or stickering of, in this case, wooden discs. So that's a good selling point, maybe. I hope you can join me for the next video. So until then, as always, you take care and goodbye.